How would it feel to be unable to breathe, walk, or even sleep? While most would attribute these functions to a variety of organs and muscles, the reality is that all these processes and more are ultimately controlled by the nervous system. Therefore, keeping this network properly working is critical to our lives. The quest to understand the brain is as old as human history itself. Archaeological evidence of trepanation dated around 2000 BC suggests that humans attempted to cure diseases by altering the brain. But it was not until the late 18th century that understanding about the brain and its workings really took off.
The brain can be divided into three regions, the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, which are further subdivided into parts. The forebrain includes the cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, associated with higher functions like thought and action. It is divided into 4 lobes, each responsible for different kinds of processing.
The frontal lobe is associated with reasoning, planning, parts of speech, movement, emotions, and problem solving. The parietal lobe is linked with movement, orientation, recognition, and perception of stimuli. It is essential for sensation and perception, and is critical in spatial sense and navigation. This region of the brain is also necessary for integration of sensory input, especially with regards to the visual system.
The most posterior portion of the cerebrum is the occipital lobe, connected to visual processing. Each lobe receives signals from the opposite eye's visual field via retinal sensors. These stimuli move through the optic tracts, passing through the thalamus to the visual cortex.
Lastly, the temporal lobe is associated with perception and recognition of auditory stimuli, memory, and speech.
The thalamus has sensory and motor functions. It is essentially the relay station between the sensory system and the cerebral cortex for all senses except olfaction, while the hypothalamus is involved in functions including homeostasis, emotion, thirst, hunger, circadian rhythms, and control of the autonomic nervous system, as well as the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus and thalamus are part of the limbic system, which also contains the amygdala and the hippocampus that is important for learning and memory. Although the midbrain receives little attention in comparison to other parts of the brain, it plays a crucial role in functions such as vision, hearing, eye movement, and body movement.
Finally, the hindbrain is composed of the cerebellum, pons, and the medulla oblongata, responsible for regulation and coordination of movement, posture, balance, motor control, sensory analysis, and maintaining vital body functions. The complex structure of the brain and the amount of vital processes controlled by it leads to an abundance of symptoms and disorders associated with damage to any single area.
While parietal lobe injuries cause mechanical difficulties, damage to the frontal lobes affect personality. Patients with frontal lesions tend to have apathy, personality changes, and lack of ability to plan or to sequence actions or tasks.
While some disorders are associated with specific regions of the brain, epileptic seizures are caused by excessive neuronal activity and can occur virtually anywhere in the brain, presenting different symptoms depending on part that is affected. For example, seizures of the temporal lobe can have dramatic effects on an individual's personality. Temporal lobe epilepsy can cause perseverative speech, paranoia, and aggressive rages. Severe damage to the temporal lobes can also alter sexual behavior. Individuals with temporal lobe lesions have difficulty placing words and pictures into categories.
Hippocampal damage can result in anterograde amnesia, a loss of ability to form new memories, although older memories may be safe. Thus, someone who sustains an injury to the hippocampus may have good memory of his childhood in the years before the injury, but relatively little memory for anything that happened since.
Though many disturbances of the nervous system are onset by injuries to the brain, spinocerebellar ataxia is a genetic disorder that frequently results in atrophy of the cerebellum, leading to clumsy motion of the body due to failure of the fine coordination of muscle movements. Generally, an affected individual retains full mental capacity but may progressively lose physical control. Many factors influence the chemistry and physiology of the brain, and even a given disorder can differ in symptoms and their severity on a case-to-case basis. As knowledge in the field of neuroscience is rapidly expanding, it is the responsibility of each individual to educate themselves about ways to keep the organ that runs life as we know it healthy.